Hey, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. On this channel, we love to talk about crowdfunding, and my name is Salvador Briggman. In this video particularly, I want to get into the actual timeline behind a successful Kickstarter campaign. So if you're wondering about the timeline in terms of the sequence of events, how long this will actually take you, and just got a rough idea of the different phases that you're going to go through, that's really what I want to cover in today's YouTube video. So hopefully you get more clarity on that. And also, if you're a viewer and you're watching some of my other videos, give me a thumbs up on this so people know that it is worth their time. But that being said, let's dive right in. Let's get to the crux of this, and let's really discover what a good timeline is when it comes to your Kickstarter campaign. Okay, man, welcome back to this channel. And again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I love putting out videos just like this for you. I really want to put out high quality education when it comes to either my blog post on crowdcrux.com, my YouTube channel here, the podcast that we do, Crowdfunding Demystified, which I publish on iTunes and Spotify, and also a version of this as well on YouTube. My goal is to really upgrade the knowledge which you have, which you can then go out there and you're armed with this war chest of information, of useful tools and techniques and tactics, all these things which you can then apply to a successful crowdfunding campaign, and ideally improve the success rates when it comes to Kickstarter. So one of the big questions that I get a lot of the times on coaching calls, all the questions I get as well when it comes to people reaching out to me on my website at crowdcrux.com or on my online forum, kickstarterforum.org, is, hey Sal, tell me more about the timeline, because I don't fully understand how that works. So in today's video, I kind of want to get into that timeline and also talk about some of the kind of nuances that go behind the scenes there, because not everyone's timeline is the same. And there are many different types of products as well that have different product life cycles. So let's kind of talk a tiny bit about the timeline right now. Okay, so the timeline typically begins with when someone has a particular idea for the product. And I'm not gonna get super nitty gritty into that because I already have some great videos out there on YouTube when it comes to product design, when it comes to coming up with a new idea and how do you actually turn that into something physical, a physical product which you can sell around the world. You got people just, around the globe owning this product in their homes. I have other videos out there about that, but it's gonna start with that idea. And then I'd say anywhere from 6 months typically to around 2 years. I've had some students who call in like, dude, I've been working on this thing for 5 years, man, right? And I've been watching your channel, you've been helping, and these kinds of things, or maybe they've read my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula, whatever it is, they've usually been working on this for a particular amount of time, okay? So you've been probably working on the actual product itself in terms of prototypes, in terms of getting different renderings together, in terms of maybe even iterating on those prototypes, continuing to improve, right? You eventually get it to a point where you're like, okay, I think that I can actually launch this campaign on Kickstarter. I really think that I could, with this prototype, attract the necessary funding, the interest, the excitement, right, that goes into a particular campaign. People would see this and they want to own this thing. So typically, again, that might be anywhere from 6 months I've seen as the earliest and the fastest, typically to around, I'd say 2 years is usually a good product development cycle. For some other people, they might be thinking about this idea and they couldn't really take action on it because different things are happening in their life. Maybe it was like for 4 years, right, or 5 years. So I do find that one of the big hallmarks of my students who are seeing success very quickly is that they're just willing to take action. They're not gonna sit on an idea, right, and they're gonna kind of pass it by. They might be mulling over it for a little bit, but they're willing to move into the next stage. So that's the first part of the timeline, is really the product development when it comes to that, and the prototypes and getting that together. At the same time, there's kind of an overlap which happens, okay? So there's like an overlap with the product timeline and then the Kickstarter campaign timeline. And by that I mean as well the marketing and those kinds of things. So I would say that once you're beginning to get to the point where you have renderings, you have the CAD drawings of the product, you have a prototype as well that's kind of coming in the mail, you're starting to get much more serious about this, you're starting to reach out to manufacturers who can really do a full-fledged order. What happens if you get 1,000 orders of this particular product? Can you fulfill that? When you're really beginning to get much more nitty-gritty about the supply chain and really answering those questions for yourself and starting to think about, what would I even price this product for, right? What am I gonna sell it for? What are the costs that go into producing this? When you really begin to get more clear around that, that's typically when a lot of people begin to think about doing a crowdfunding campaign. Now, this campaign could be on Kickstarter or it could be on Indiegogo, which is their competitor. Regardless, this is typically when the education phase begins. And I would make the argument that there should be a solid educational base in order to do an actual crowdfunding campaign. So you're aware of just the checklist items, the things that you need, you understand the phases of the campaign, you understand what you got to do in order to be successful. That's exactly why I put out content like this on this channel, and also obviously with my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula, and with my podcast as well, is to help educate people so we can improve success rates. So I would say that most people are usually studying the subject for around, I'd say, 1 to at least 3 months during that time. And maybe while they're also educating themselves and learning and studying or booking coaching calls or moving forward with this particular process, they are also executing at the same time. So there's usually, like I said, around a 1 to 3 month kind of education process, understanding how does Kickstarter work, how does this work for creators, what are the requirements of doing a campaign, all of that kind of stuff. Another overlap is then when you actually begin to work on the campaign. So this is what I call like executing, right? This is when you're taking all those information, those resources, those tools, those things that you've downloaded into your head, this massive library of information, right? And you're actually starting to use it. And that's where knowledge becomes power, right? We actually start to execute on some of these teachings and some of these tips and techniques. So with that usually begins with what's called a pre-launch campaign. So the pre-launch campaign is where you're basically building up an audience before you go live with a Kickstarter campaign. So that pre-launch might last on the shortest side. The shortest time I've ever seen a pre-launch done is usually shorter, like 3 to 4 weeks. However, you must have your ducks in a row, okay? This is not for the faint of heart. You really have to know what you're doing if you're gonna have a very short pre-launch like this. Because again, it's almost kind of like, if you wanna think of it like a plane, okay? A plane that's taking off. You wanna have enough runway to be able to get that thing up into the air. If you don't, it's pretty much just like a rocket ship, right? And you can get a rocket ship up into the air, but it takes a lot of fuel. It takes a lot of people who know what they're doing in order to get that thing flown very quickly without any kind of runway, right? Or you might have like a jet, right? That's being able to have a very short runway and take off very quickly. True, but it's also like a military grade technology. And there's a lot of thought that goes behind that particular design for the average plane, right? The average person that's trying to get into the sky. I would say that more of like a 3-month pre-launch is usually typical. On the longer side, I have seen people do 5 and 6 month pre-launch campaigns. I would say the average is around 3 months. On the shorter side, maybe 2 months with some testing there as well. So I would say anywhere between 2 to 3 months is usually average with a pre-launch. I see a lot of people taking their time with this to really build the audience, answer questions related to that. What do people like in terms of the features, in terms of the functions? They're using the pre-launch not only to build an audience, but also to answer some user testing questions, right? With that. So in that case, it might be more along the lines of 4 or 5 months, but that will at least give you an idea of that particular phase. Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillrite is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillrite today. Link in the description. The next phase is when you are going live with this particular campaign. So then you decide to go live, let's just say on Kickstarter, because that's kind of the subject of this video, right? So you're gonna go live with that campaign. That's kind of when you're taking off into the sky, right? You're taking off with that beautiful plane that's already now has that lift factor, that you got enough energy to really get this thing into the sky. At that point in time, if you're doing the campaign, I'd say that the majority of my audience is typically falling in the 25-day to 45-day duration when it comes to a campaign. I do have a lot of people as well who sometimes will go on the shorter side or on the longer side, but they usually know what they're doing. This isn't their first rodeo, isn't their first campaign. They probably already have a little bit of experience when it comes out. So for the average person, I would say 25 days to 45 days is usually typical when it comes to actual duration of that particular Kickstarter campaign. At that point in time, if you actually do the things that I talk about in my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula, if you follow what I say in my coaching calls, when I'm having calls individually, one-on-one with students, if you follow everything to a T, listening to the podcast and hearing what other people are doing, right? If you really are a student of this craft and if you execute upon it, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna have a tremendous amount of momentum, particularly at the end of the campaign. And this is why a lot of people that I work with will end up going into Indiegogo in demand, okay? So this is basically a way to continue raising funds after a Kickstarter campaign is complete. You might go into Indiegogo in demand. You might decide to accept pre-orders on your website, accept pre-orders or continuous fundraising through other platforms as well. Indiegogo is not the only one that's out there, but I would say that's a very common kind of an easy transition because there isn't a lot of work, right? That's involved, and that's always a nice thing because it is so much work doing a crowdfunding campaign. So you go into Indiegogo in demand, and then I've had people who want to be 30 days in Indiegogo in demand. demand. I've also had students who want to keep it there for like 6 months, right? For like 5 months, 4 months. And they want to just keep this in-demand campaign open because it's very easy to continue to collect orders that way. Downside is you're giving a percentage away to Indiegogo, obviously, right? So some other people are like, you know what? No, dude, I just want to I want to do this for like 30 more days. I want to take advantage of that momentum that I built up. And then I want to transition into e-commerce, and I want to launch a Shopify store or a Magento store or a WordPress WooCommerce store or something like that, right? Online, I want to use Wix, maybe Wix e-commerce features, whatever it is. I have some other videos out there on that. So in terms of the live Kickstarter campaign, and again, this is average, this is different from every person. I'd say it averages like 30 days on Kickstarter, and then maybe 30 days if you did everything right on Indiegogo in demand or another platform just like that. And that would then be around a 60-day funding duration. And this again is assuming that things are going well, right? That things are moving forward, that you're following the teachings, okay? And in addition, after that point in time, you might decide to extend that other campaign which you're running. You might decide to do something else, which is like a pre-order. You might decide to launch a store or something like that. And then momentum can continue to grow and kind of be pushed into these other phases. So what does this all mean? Let's kind of get this a little bit more demystified and a little bit more simple for you. So to kind of recap, there's the product phase, right, which is actually getting this product made. And in my experience, that could be between 6 months and 2 years in order to get a product made. And it's going to depend a lot on the type of product. It's going to depend on you as well, what's happening in your life. We all got very busy lives here, right? We're doing lots of different stuff. And I know you guys are also very ambitious. So it might take you shorter, it might take you longer. Really, it's going to depend on you and also things that go into the actual product. Some people, for example, have very easy products when it comes to just having like plastic and some mechanics right there. Other people need like software and electronics, right? And things that are actually gonna go into that particular project. They learn new skills, right? So there's different kind of phases there. I do work with people as well when it comes to them just having an idea and every single step, you know, coaching, helping them along the way, getting to the point where they can actually do a campaign. In addition, so that would be, like I said, 6 months to 2 years. Then to recap, at some point in time, you're gonna start learning a little bit and educating yourself about crowdfunding. In my opinion, you should be doing this as soon as possible, because the more you do it, the more you also understand the road ahead and you know exactly what you got to do every step of the way. It makes things so much easier when you actually launch a campaign and you don't become one of those people who launch too soon and then you fail. And then you have to learn everything and then relaunch, right? Or you don't become one of those people who wishes they discovered the education ahead of time and then are like, oh man, I could have raised so much more. So to me, it just makes so much sense just to kind of start to absorb this into your head, even if it's just listening to the podcast on the way to work or, you know, as you're cleaning your room or whatever it is that you're doing, right? So I would say, again, that kind of education phase is usually at least 3 months. Then you're doing the pre-launch campaign, which could last from 2 months typically to about 5 months, depending on how that's going and depending on how you do it. Then you're going live, which is again a 30-day campaign. Then you might be going into another platform potentially or doing a pre-order campaign after that if you have momentum for a further 30 days. And then from there, you're kind of taking this entire experience, which if you've done it correctly, you know, if you've followed the paint by numbers formula that I talk about in my book, this way you can have momentum as well with growing your brand. So you have an audience of people, you have the funding you need, you're delivering on the product, you're moving into the fulfillment timeline, which maybe would be anywhere from 1 to 3 months to 4 months. Sometimes you might delay, it might be a little bit longer than that. You're moving into the fulfillment timeline when it comes to the actual product. And from the marketing perspective, you're then growing your brand, right? You're continuing to get traffic, continuing to get people excited online. You're getting customer reviews like rapid fire because you have this audience that is all giving you feedback now on the product which you've delivered to their doorstep, and it can be an extremely exciting and very rewarding experience. So hopefully you found that to be useful, informative, and educational when it comes to this particular phase of the campaign, which has a lot of mystery around it. Hopefully you understand this a little bit more. And if you do, give me a thumbs up on this video. In addition, if you would like to explore how this works for you, if you really want to get into the strategy for your particular product, for where you are when it comes to your resources, to really what you need to do in order to have a successful outcome. And if you've been kind of working on this for a while and like you have a little bit of understanding how this works, but you want to really fill in some of those gaps, this is a great opportunity for you to book a one-on-one intensive coaching call with me. So with these calls, I really bring my A game, man. I try to take this entire library of information that I have in my head, all these different campaigns, all these different strategies that work, many different categories, and apply this to yours and give you a very realistic idea, not only if you should even do a campaign, but also how to be successful. What are some of the tools and techniques you might not know about? What are some of the people maybe even in the industry that you should get to know? Is it even possible that maybe at some point my team could help you with this particular project, right? And we can only help on a selective basis, and particularly if we believe in a particular campaign. So we can talk about a lot of different things, but to me, this is honestly one of the best investments which you can make when it comes to your particular project. And I'm a little bit biased in saying that, but at the same time, if you're not yet ready to do that, just dive more into the education, right? The free education I put out there with my blog, crowdfunding.com, with my podcast, with the book, which is a very low entry point. I have a great version on Audible as well. This can all help you leading up to your campaign so that you are more successful. And hopefully, if you are, you'll be like one of the many people that have come back onto my podcast and been like, Sal, look, we did it and it worked. And I love that, man. Dude, that's like karma to me. It's like you put something out there into the universe, other people benefit, and then they can come back and they can share their story, and then more people also see that. So that would be my greatest wish for you. But that being said, I'm going too long with this video, man. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Salvador Briggman. I'm so passionate about this work, and I will see you next time.